On my 68th birthday, I received a mysterious gift. No card, no sender's name, just 2 cold words, "Happy birthday." But the moment I saw that handwriting, my heart skipped. Because it belonged to the son I hadn't spoken to in 3 years. What I thought was just a whiskey bottle turned out to be something far deadlier, something that nearly took 2 lives. Backhand index pointing right. Don't forget to subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. My name is Henry Cole. I live alone in a quiet town in Ohio. On that October morning, sunlight filtered through the blinds as I unwrapped the package. A limited edition whiskey bottle gleamed under the light emerald label, gold lettering, wax-sealed cork. It was the kind of bottle people display, not drink. Whiskey used to be my thing. One glass after fixing fence posts, or when my wife, Margaret, was alive, we'd share it on Sunday evenings. But ever since my heart attack 3 years ago, I had given it up. My son, Daniel, had been in the hospital room when the doctor warned me. He knew. And yet, here was a bottle from him, the first sign of life from Daniel in years. I didn't open it. Instead, I thought of my old friend and neighbor, Walter Hayes. A man who once repaired my roof after a storm without asking for a dime. If anyone deserved something fine, it was him. By sunset, the whiskey was riding shotgun in my old Chevy, headed straight to Walter's house. Walter greeted me at the porch in his usual plaid shirt, eyes bright when he saw the bottle. "Henry, this is too much," he said. "Make tonight special," I told him. I drove home, uneasy. Daniel had never been one to spend money without reason. And when the phone rang that night, my gut twisted. "Dad," Daniel's voice came, smooth but forced. "You got my gift?" "Yes." "Well. Did you try it?" His tone sharpened. "No. I gave it to Walter." The silence that followed wasn't just silence. It was heavy. Dangerous. "You gave it to Walter?" His voice was ice. Then, click. The line went dead. The next morning, Walter's wife called me, her voice breaking. "Henry, Walter collapsed. He's in the hospital. Doctors think it's poisoning." The phone nearly slipped from my hand. Poison. That's when my eyes landed on the mason jar in my fridge, the one I had poured a small sample of the whiskey into without thinking. And in the trash, a small white vial I didn't remember owning. By evening, I had both packed in a bag, driving them over to Dr. Grant, an old war buddy who now ran a veterinary lab. He tested it. The call came back the next day. "Henry, it's white snakeroot. Enough to stop a man's heart." I closed my eyes. The silence on the line said it all. My son had sent me poison. I returned home to find the vial gone from my trash. Someone had been in my house. Someone careful, but not careful enough. I sat at my kitchen table with a notepad, writing 2 columns. What I know: Daniel sent the bottle. He asked if I drank it. He went cold when I told him Walter had it. The whiskey contains poison. What I can prove: the whiskey sample. Dr. Grant's test. My memory of Daniel's words. The bridge between the two was missing. But I had a plan. I slipped a recorder into my jacket and drove straight to Daniel's house. When he opened the door, his face went from surprise to calculation. "Dad," he said slowly. "Didn't expect you." Inside, I asked, "Did you ever try the whiskey you sent me?" He smirked. "It was for you. A gift. You knew I quit drinking. People change." I leaned in. "Funny thing, Daniel. Walter said his favorite pour was from the middle shelf, the single malt." For a fraction of a second, his face froze. Then he forced a laugh. "I never told you where it was stored," I said, staring at him. He dried an already clean glass, smiling like nothing was wrong. But I had caught the flicker in his eyes. And the recorder in my pocket had caught everything else. Back at home, I sat with the jar of poisoned whiskey under the pale October light. My son hadn't just sent me a bottle. He had sent me a warning, a message written not in ink, but in venom. Why? I didn't know yet. But I intended to find out. Because sometimes, the deadliest gifts don't come wrapped in bows, they come wrapped in memories. And this was just the beginning. Last time, I discovered that the whiskey my son Daniel sent me wasn't a gift, it was poison. It nearly killed my best friend, and when I confronted Daniel, I caught him slipping. But what I didn't know then was why. Why would my own flesh and blood send me death disguised as a birthday present? This part of the story is where the truth starts to bleed through. Backhand index pointing right. Don't forget to subscribe and comment if you've been following since part 1. Walter was still alive, but barely. I visited him again at St. Luke's. Machines beeped steadily, each beat reminding me how close he'd come to not making it. His wife clutched his hand like it was the only thing keeping him here. Henry, she whispered, the doctor said if he'd had one more glass, he wouldn't be here. I nodded, jaw tight. Because that glass had been meant for me. And if I was right, Daniel wouldn't stop until he got what he wanted. That night, I returned home, locked the door, and checked every window twice. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on me. Around midnight, I woke to the faintest sound. A creak on the floorboards. I slipped my hand under the pillow, gripping the old revolver I hadn't touched in years. By the time I reached the hallway, the sound was gone. But in the morning, I found something chilling, muddy footprints near the back door. Too small to be mine. Daniel had been here. I needed answers. And fast. I started digging, literally through old files and figuratively through old wounds. At the county records office, I found something that stopped me cold. 3 years ago, right after I had my heart attack, I had quietly changed my will. Most of what I owned, including the land, the house, and the savings, would go to Walter's daughter, Emily. She'd been like a granddaughter to me ever since Margaret passed. Daniel had been left only a fraction. And Daniel had found out. I drove to his house again, recorder in my pocket, heart pounding against my ribs like a hammer. He opened the door slower this time. No smile. No warmth. Dad, he said flatly. You were in my house last night, I said. His lips twitched. Maybe you imagined it. You poisoned me because of the will, I said, voice steady. Because you think I chose someone else over you. He didn't deny it. He just leaned closer, eyes cold. You already chose, old man, he hissed. I'm just making sure it counts. And with that, I had it, confession caught on tape. I handed the recording to the sheriff the next morning. They took it seriously. Poison, breaking and entering, attempted murder, all tied to my own son. But here's the thing about family, it doesn't break clean. Even after everything, part of me still wanted to believe Daniel could change. That he wasn't beyond saving. But as they put the handcuffs on him, he turned his head and gave me a smile. Not of fear. Not of regret. A smile that promised, this wasn't over. I thought turning my son Daniel over to the sheriff would be the end of it. But I was wrong. Because some stories don't end when the handcuffs click. They end when the truth comes out, and the truth was darker than I ever imagined. Backhand index pointing right. If you've been watching since part 1, hit subscribe so you don't miss how this story ends. 2 weeks after his arrest, Daniel walked free. Insufficient evidence, the paper said. The whiskey sample had been ruled inconclusive after a second lab test. The missing vial? Gone. And the recording? His lawyer claimed it was taken out of context. Walter was still recovering, too weak to testify. The system had let my son walk away. And I knew he wouldn't stop. One night, I found an envelope on my porch. No stamp. No address. Just one sentence inside. Next time, I won't miss. My hands shook as I read it. I called the sheriff. They told me to stay vigilant. But vigilance doesn't stop poison. So I made a choice. I wasn't going to wait for Daniel to strike again. I called him. Daniel, I said. I want to talk. Just us. No police. Meet me at the old mill by the river. The pause on the line told me everything. He thought he had me cornered. Fine, he said. Tomorrow night. That night, I packed two things: the revolver Margaret had once begged me to throw away, and the recorder I'd used before. This time, I wanted the truth loud and clear. The old mill was nothing but shadows and rust. Daniel arrived in his truck, stepping out with a smirk. You finally came to your senses, Dad, he said. Why, Daniel? I asked, my voice echoing in the empty hall. Why try to kill me? He laughed, bitter. Because you gave my life to someone else. You think Emily is your real child? You think Walter deserved what's mine? You've always loved everyone more than me. It was never about money, I said quietly. It was about choices. You chose greed. You chose hate. He stepped closer, eyes burning. And I choose to finish what I started. That's when I pulled the recorder from my pocket, its red light blinking. You just did. The sheriff's men were waiting outside. This time, there was no insufficient evidence. His words, his threats, they had everything they needed. As they dragged Daniel away, he didn't fight. He just stared at me with the same cold smile. Blood is blood, Dad, he whispered. And you can't erase me. I watched the taillights fade into the night. My chest ached, not from my heart condition, but from the truth. The deadliest gift I ever received hadn't been the poisoned whiskey. It had been raising a son who could smile while trying to kill me. Backhand index pointing right, and that is the end of this story. Subscribe for more true suspense stories every week.